I earned a bachelor's in hospitality management. I managed a restaurant for a while and enjoyed helping others, but I wanted a different way to serve. Then I discovered the Felician Way and enrolled in Felician University's Accelerated Nursing Program. Felician ABSN is offered in 2 accelerated formats, a hybrid program in Parsippany and an on-ground program in Rutherford. Plus, Felician University provides a values-based education, which is important to me. Discover the Felician Way. Search Felician ABSN.
This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/intotheportal.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay.
We got a film Friday for y'all. It's not the one we planned on.
Yeah, so here we are. We're doing a film Friday, but I really kind of screwed up this week. I accidentally deleted our half of our Ascension recording that we did with physicist Chris from Dash of Science podcast, which was an interesting thing to wake up to the other day. So anyway, didn't follow my own cardinal rule, but of exporting right away.
Exactly.
But,
might have avoided this.
Indeed. So lesson learned in the podcasting realm. But we still wanted to bring you guys something, and we've been talking about doing this movie for a long time.
Yes.
So today we're talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, but for all of you that were really hoping for Ascension, that will be coming out in the next few weeks to a month.
Definitely.
Just depending on when we can reschedule that.
100%.
Yeah, let's get into it though, because there is a lot to talk about with this indie film.
Sure, yeah.
It's not an indie film, but it's about an indie guy.
Indiana film. Yeah, definitely the polar opposite of an indie film. I wonder what the budget was, actually.
Oh, Lord.
I didn't pull that up. 1981 is when it came out. So
obviously directed by none of them.
Oh, the Spielberg. One of my favorite movie in the series, too. Like, I'll just say that right now. Out of the 3 Indiana Jones movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark, like, man, they kicked it off, like, really well with that trilogy. So, I mean, the story begins, though, not dealing with the Ark of the Covenant, which, of course, is this priceless object that he's going after. And that's kind of the reason why we're doing this, too. It's a bit of a tease for our patrons because we have the Ark of the Covenant as an episode coming out on Patreon this month.
Yes, we do.
So, but the movie starts with Indiana in South America. When you watch, in the actual scenes itself, it just literally just says South America. Vague. Like, doesn't say where.
South America, 1936.
Right,
That's all
1936. And
Jungle.
and he refers to this group there, the Jovitos, and again, we're like, you still don't really know where the hell he is.
Right, you get reference to, like, what was it, like a poison dart or something
Exactly.
in the tree? Or
yeah, the guy tastes it, he's like, oh, it's still fresh, 3 days, 3 days, they're close.
3 days, hey? Because then the other guy makes the comment, is like, they're already watching us. But then the other guy says, oh, but if they were watching us, we'd already be dead.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it turns out, so what I was the crux of, like, us talking about this movie is the historical accuracies, I feel like. You know what I mean? Like, for us as, like, our show.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
And that's, like, why people love this movie so much, because, A, everyone hates Nazis, everyone loves adventure, and everyone loves Harrison Ford.
Everyone loves the triumphal sort of adventure story in general. It's very all-American, very Western Hollywood, very
in the
quintessential.
best way, though. In the best way possible, right?
Exactly. It's almost like the golden era of that sort of genre film before it kind of went into the sort of, what would you even call it? It's like almost like that, the microscope of, like, you know, academics and being like, this is all just one big celebration of colonialism and blah, 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 and whatever else you want to say, humanist and whatever. But we love this movie.
We do. We really do.
It's great.
And it actually does have a lot of historical accuracies. But before we jump right into that, though, let's just do a quick run through the character list, I guess.
Sure.
Even though it obviously is a massive cast. But just the main ones. Obvious, like, I always make fun of, well, not make fun, I poke fun at Amber for really loving Richard Gere, like how I love Richard Gere.
God.
But it really is just a joke. I'm just joking. Harrison Ford is my man crush in movies.
You
for
have
sure.
so many man crushes.
Well,
what
yeah.
about the guy?
Well, sure.
What about the guy from Taboo? You love that guy too.
Tom Hardy. Yeah, I mean, he's great as well. I mean,
but at the same time, you have so many man crushes. I can't actually think of a female lead that you really gravitate to.
I know, right? It used to be Scarlett Johansson when I was in high school, and then that just slipped away.
Oh
that really
God.
slipped away.
Are you serious?
Well, I think that was sort of just a generic latch on to a blonde actress that you like when you're 16 years old. But wow, I'm really revealing my true colors in this episode, aren't I? And I apologize if I sound a little like Ray Romano today because I'm a little under the weather.
I know. So he's a little bit nasally.
A little nasally.
I'm pretty okay. I'm a little under the weather, but we are in the process of moving too. So apologies if the audio is a little bit echoey.
We do not have our blanket fort.
No.
Yes.
It's all packed away.
All right.
Unfortunately.
So, Sexiest Man Alive, Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones. And then you've got Marion Ravenwood, the daughter of his former mentor, who's played by Karen Allen. And then Salah, who is Indiana's friend, who's the Egyptian digger in Cairo, played by John Rhys Davies.
That name is really familiar. I can't remember where else.
He's in a ton of stuff. You know what he was in? We just watched recently. Again, God, showing our true colors. Not that we haven't had a million Murder, She Wrote references in this show, but he was in an episode we just watched recently where they're in like New Orleans, like the voodoo episode.
Oh my god!
He plays the dad.
Oh no way! Yeah, totally. So familiar. Oh my gosh!
And then one of my favorite characters in the movie,
Gimli too, in Lord of the Rings. Sorry,
he was in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
no way.
He was the voice of Treebeard. Oh, sorry. He was Gimli, and then he was the voice of Treebeard.
Okay.
Treebeard.
Treebird. Treebird. Combination of two local breweries here. He was one of my favorite characters in this movie, John Rhys Davies, Salah. He's so funny, Indiana's friend. He's such a good character. Then we got René Baloche, the French archaeologist and the arch nemesis of Indiana Jones, who always seems to be stealing his thunder and literally stealing the artifacts he finds. So this is played by Paul Freeman. This is tough, actually, because I love Major Arnold Thought, the guy who gets his face melted. Everyone knows this. Yep. Played by Ronald Lacey. And super interesting character. Almost a Himmler-esque look he's given to him.
Those little glasses.
Yeah, the round glasses and just being sent around to find the artifacts, right? Like, he's the artifact guy.
He is. He's like the hardcore badass guy that you don't want to... He's always wearing his uniform, too.
Always. He's got it's like the leather duster. And he's still wearing it like in the desert too. Yeah. It's like you're wearing a black leather duster in the desert.
I don't even want to know what kind of swass is going on there.
Oh dear. Oh good heavens.
Swooping and swassing all over the place.
Oh man, you're gonna need the Ark for all kinds of miracles after that. So okay, I did want to get into this though. So okay, it starts in South America like we said, but has absolutely no bearing to the rest of the story other than the introduction of Baloche or Belloc. This this French archaeologist who's the perfect villain, and you get this epic laugh at the beginning, that first scene, right? So awesome. But really interesting, though, the Jovitos in the film are actually based off of a very real native population that lived in the Andes of Peru, and this was prior to Spanish conquest. So they were known as the Warriors of the Clouds. Their actual name was, I'm going to try my best to pronounce this, the Chachapoyans. Chachapoyans. Is that close? I think that's pretty close. Mm-hmm. Anyway, these people lived in these crazy high altitudes of the Andes, farmed and lived amongst this lush vegetation, so they were a very real basis for this remote group. They were basically wiped out, though, sometime after 1450. The Inca basically consumed their society, and then very quickly after that, the Spanish obviously wiped out the Inca. But more or less, there wasn't an actual gold idol that we know of in their mythology. Okay. But it is portrayed in the movie, apparently, as a fertility idol. According to this one article that I pulled up, which I thought was kind of interesting because the face is depicted as like this teeth-bearing head with hair, kind of weird-looking face.
It's hard to make out what it looks like. It's almost like some sort of folklore creature.
Yeah, like it's a deity of some kind, obviously. Almost like totem pole-esque features where it's like embellished, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there as a fun little tidbit of info because it's based off of very real people. And sets the stage for him and like his, you know...
the whole narrative, right? Because Indy, he's just like so badass. Like even I just love how the first sort of shot, the close-up you get of him when he's in the jungle like that is obscured. You get this shot several times throughout several points of this film. Yeah. But it's just so badass. It's like basically just silhouette. You get the classic hat, and then you get him sort of turn, and then you get the eye, and it's just like this. Oh, you're just like, yes, this is amazing. Right after because like he takes his classic whip. It's like, you know, it's right-hand man, so to speak, and just like whoosh, gets the gun right out of the guy's hand. Right? Who was that guy anyway? He was just betraying them in the moment. Like,
yeah, he was just like a
there, and then
guide
he's
that
just
decided
gone.
to screw him over is what it seemed like.
That's
Because you didn't
stupid.
get a name for that character.
No, you don't. And at that point, they haven't actually. He didn't even say that this is the spot. This is where we need to be. Like
No.
he didn't even say that. So it's like, what is your modus operandi with that? You're just gonna shoot him and just hope that you're there.
I know, right? Like, I guess they say that they think they're close because they find the darts.
So he
the
thinks he
arrows in the
doesn't
tree,
need
so
him
he's
anymore.
like, okay, we're close.
So he's
like,
gonna
let's-
steal the map and then just take off.
I suppose so.
Not the best plan.
A
but-
nefarious character, to say the least.
And then what happens to him? He literally just runs away, doesn't he?
Yeah, he runs away and doesn't make it very far because
Right.
he gets captured by Balak, who manages to. He speaks the language somehow.
Yeah.
Which is interesting
Very
because he's got he's not. He's a British actor, but in the movie he's got this thick French accent, and he doesn't seem the type that would really.
Oh, Paul Freeman.
Anyway, he is one of my favorite characters, though. He's such a great villain. And I have a question for you at the end, like favorite scene, but I have a few, so I'll just throw it out now.
Yeah.
So epic at the beginning when he just has that laugh. So Indy's getting away, and he does that like the throat cutting sign to the Jovitos, and they go chasing after him, and they just are the worst bow and arrow shooters in the entire world in the movie.
Yeah, the North Sentinelese
which
would be
is
like, you guys are just doing it all wrong.
Man, the North Sentinelese would really, these guys can't hold a candle to the North Sentinelese. You literally like have it like some guy goes and lines up an arrow to try to shoot at Indy, and he just points it straight up in the air and shoots it like straight in the air. It's like, yeah, I don't know if that one's gonna be very close, buddy. But
Yeah,
anyway.
it depends on the range, I guess. If he's going for the
Right.
high arc and then he's just right through the skull, like you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's your question though?
Oh well, I was going to save it for the end. Just the
Oh, you just
favorite
wanted to leave it
scene,
up.
the favorite scene. But you can tell me at the end. I've got multiple though, so
Actually, that's a good thing that you pose that now, so I can kind of think.
There
about
you
it
go.
A little bit
There you go.
further. I really enjoyed the end of that scene too, the opening sequence, because it's just that classic. You get Indy swinging in onto the plane, like off of the vine, like he's like freaking Tarzan. It's so good.
And they do obviously they emphasize all the like what's the word, like quintessential aspects of the character in that first part of the scene, right? The whip, the hat,
very
the
established.
leather jacket,
Yes.
the
all the tropes,
all of it, all of the tropes
The
of Indiana
motifs
Jones,
or whatever.
exactly, and all the things you find in the gift shop at Disneyland for the Indiana Jones shop, right? And when I was there when I was a kid, damn, did I ever want that hat? I wanted the whip so bad, and they had it. And
You
it
were
was
even
like,
saying that at the end of the film this time around, you're like, I wish I could just wear that hat.
well, I wish it was socially acceptable, you know?
Yeah.
Like back in the day when everyone had hats,
Not the
everyone had
30s.
cool hats,
No.
you know? Ah, man, different time.
It's really stupid. Now we've just downgraded to baseball caps.
Yeah. And most of the people that wear them have never even played baseball.
Large
You know what I'm
majority.
saying? Or any sport for that matter.
Any sport at all.
Let's get back to the actual like plot here, though.
Let's do it. All right.
So basically, when the actual arc comes into play, these army intelligence officers come to speak with Indiana at the university.
Yeah.
So they come to speak with him and Marcus Brody, who's the director of antiquities for the. I can't remember what the museum is actually called.
Oh,
they just
that's-
refer to it as the Museum of Antiquities.
Yeah. They are in America, though.
Yeah, and we don't know what
the
state.
US
Are
military.
we in? I think he's in Washington. I feel like it says
Yeah.
DC in that first scene.
Probably. Like, even at the end scene, right, when he goes to that final meeting with the same people from the beginning.
Right.
And then he walks down those stairs, and, like, I feel like that is definitely in DC. That's, like, an epic set of stairs. Like, or maybe it's Philadelphia. I don't know. It's somewhere on the East Coast,
Major,
definitely.
totally.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
those sort of founding cities.
But this is interesting, right? Because this is before the war. But obviously, you know, the Western allies are watching the Nazi regime very closely.
Oh, yeah. It's
In the
36.
30s, right? So this is-
36. So this is getting to the point where they're, like...
Yeah.
Almost at the point where they're like, all right, this guy is definitely tipping over the edge, and probably someone's gonna have to do something about
Probably
this.
should have done something about it a few years earlier.
I believe actually by this point, it could be 37, but I'm pretty sure they started that policy. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was basically the policy of appeasement, where they gifted Hitler with the things that he wanted.
Yeah.
What was first? Was it the annexation of Poland? I believe it was. And they were just like, you know what, just take it. Maybe, sure, whatever.
Yeah,
and
just
like
don't
Britain
be-
signed off. They're like, okay, maybe he'll stop now. But no, he didn't.
Yeah.
It might not have been Poland, though. That might have actually
No.
been
It was
somewhere.
something, yeah, no, because he just straight up invaded Poland. That was how
Yeah.
the war started.
That's true. Yeah, there was another small state that he just kind of usurped, and they were like,
Sure.
"Oh, was it Austria?
like-
I think it was Austria.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I don't know."
We gotta
Anyways, I
brush
can't
up on
remember.
our World War II history.
Oh my god, I feel so stupid. Yeah.
But-
Let's get back to the movie.
Yeah, but it's interesting though, because it's before the war, but these army intelligence guys are obviously intercepting these German communiques. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting to me about this is like, why are they're coming to Indiana Jones for two reasons, right? Like, one, there's a mention of a U.S. citizen, this Abner Ravenwood. Mm-hmm. So, like, in my mind, there's two questions. It's like, are they genuinely concerned that there's, like, treason happening here, that there's an American archaeologist working for the Germans? Mm-hmm. And why would that be a major focus of Army intelligence? Because he's not really linked to the military. He's not giving away state secrets, right? He's not a politician. He's not any of these things. Mm-hmm. And then the flip side of it would be, are they genuinely concerned about this language and then the Nazis digging for like something, quote unquote, in Cairo, because they don't know at this point what they're looking for.
They're just concerned in general, I think, because of the general threat of the Nazi regime.
Right. But it's just the language of the message. It's just so, I mean, obviously it works for the plot of the story and that's what it's for.
Exactly.
But it's just, I don't know.
Kickstarts things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is actually kind of interesting because, like, this whole character, what's his name again? Redwood? Or
Abner
Ravenwood.
Ravenwood.
Ravenwood. Like, he obviously is, like you said, he's not a politician. He is someone high up in his own field of archaeology. Ergo, like, you know, the Nazis, they had their own agenda and their own policy of pursuing these archaeological sort of means to justify their regime in general.
Yes.
And their ideology, sorry. Yeah, but that is an interesting thought. Just like, in what way, in what purpose? I honestly think it doesn't even matter, right? If you have an American citizen participating with not a sworn enemy, because you're not at war right now,
Right.
Or yet, but it still is concerning, right, for state security to have someone that is a high up in a university, in any establishment or institution, right, to be in communications. Or was he actually in communications, or were they just mentioning that they wanted to track him down?
I think they were just mentioning him. So the
Okay.
message they read was Tanis Development Proceeding, locate headpiece staff of Raw Abner Ravenwood, U.S.
Okay, so his name is literally just mentioned there. It's not as
Right.
if it was a communication between
Right.
him and the Nazis.
Because at this point, we don't actually know it, but Abner is actually dead.
Right. Exactly.
He's been
Murked.
offed.
Yeah.
Before and obviously Indiana finds this out when he goes looking for Miriam to try to find the headpiece. So he accepts this mission essentially, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty insane. And like, I guess before we
Yeah.
really get into it, though, actually we should mention a few of these other things. 'Cause
Oh, yeah, well, we did want to just dive into some of this, the more historical facts regarding...
the craziness of the search, like,
Well, exactly, right? Because this is documenting, like, this film documents something that the Nazis were actually doing in practice in history. And we've referenced them repeatedly, like, you know, like the Amber Room is a great example of that. The Nazi Bell, like the Astonishing Legends, they did a great series on that.
yes.
And then just in general, like, you know, like, it's just a perversion of the archaeological record, like I said, right, to support their ideology. And this actually reached as far as, like, Tibet, right? Like, they were going all over the world trying to prop up their historical basis for, like, the Aryan master race or whatever.
Right.
And
That's actually a funny connection. You mentioned that you wrote that in here, reached as far as Tibet, because that's that first scene when we get that interaction
Yeah.
with Nazis. It's in Nepal.
Exactly.
Which is really cool.
yeah, that's actually, I didn't even do that on purpose.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Serendipity.
Oh yeah, serendipity. But yeah, so there was an actual Nazi. It was referred to as an elite Nazi research institute. I just sounded like Brad Pitt. Nazis. Oh my god.
Fat Nazis.
Fat Nazis. So anyways, and this institute or program or whatever I want to call it was called the Ananurbi. And I'm totally saying that in an Americanized way. I'm sorry, but that was the pronunciation I got from
Google pronunciation.
Yeah,
Google
exactly.
Translate.
But AKA, this is just the Nazi Paranormal Research Corps is kind of how you can refer to it, because they were going all out, balls to the wall with all sorts of crazy shit, like that no one else was really entertaining.
No.
Anyways, and I came across this book. It's called Hitler's Willing Archaeologists, and it was by a lady named Heather Pringle. And she kind of gets into how the SS perverted the Paleolithic record. This is a quote, to support Nazi ideology.
Right.
All right, so I'll just read out a little brief thing that I picked up from her. And basically, yeah, it's just describing what this Institute was all about.
Okay.
So essentially, the official mission of the Anunnaki was to unearth, this is a quote, unearth new evidence of the accomplishments and deeds of the German ancestors using exact scientific methods. That was the sort of layout, how they kind of sold it to the German people.
Okay.
But, and this is a quote, in reality, the Anunnaki was in the business of myth-making. Its prominent researchers devoted themselves to distorting the truth and churning out carefully tailored evidence to support the ideas of Adolf Hitler, who believed that the only Aryans, a fictional Nordic, in quotes, race of tall, flaxen-haired men and women from Northern Europe, possessed the genius needed to create civilization. Most modern Germans, he claimed, were descended from these ancient Aryans, but scholars had failed to uncover any proof of such a master race lighting the torch of civilization and giving birth to all the refinements of human culture. The answer to this problem, in Himmler's mind, lay more in German scholarship of the right political stripe. So he created the Anunnaki, which he conceived of as a research organization brimming with brilliant mavericks and brainy young upstarts who would publicly unveil a new portrait of the ancient world, one in which the Aryans would be seen coining civilization and bringing light to the inferior races, just as Hitler claimed. End quote.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that's kind of an I loved the language of that, like the brilliant mavericks and the brainy young upstarts and all these people that could just be used by the regime and coerced into producing the types of things that they wanted them to produce. And that's where we see, this is kind of where that character comes in, right? In Indiana Jones. He is one of these people. He's not he's not German, which is a big difference, and he's not a Nazi, which is a big difference too, but he is full of ambition in his own regard, as we see in the first scene, right?
Belloc is who you're referring to, right?
Yes,
the Frenchman.
The Frenchman, yeah, and ultimately, I guess, Indy's foil, so to speak.
The irony for Belloc in all of this is that he really is lining himself up for like being prosecuted for treason, right? Because obviously France was a member of the Allies, or the Western Allies, and this is now 1937, like right now. No, it's 1938 actually. I believe this is like right before the war when they're actually in Egypt digging. I'd have to triple check on that. It's 1936 when he's in South America, goes back home, continues on with this later. So we're ticking down real close to the war here, and that's a risky business for a French archaeologist.
Yeah.
But he's not even really an archaeologist. He's just a looter, really. He masquerades as an archaeologist, but he sells his items on the black market. Like Indy makes that comment at the beginning. He's like, there's only one place where he can sell that gold head in Marrakesh. I need a ticket to Marrakesh. Love it.
I need a ticket to Marrakesh.
But there were other crazy things that the Nazis were searching for too, right? So I had a little list here. The Holy Grail is probably the next most significant religious artifact, or just artifact in general, that potentially is still out there besides the Ark of the Covenant. They also were searching for the Spear of Destiny.
What's that one from?
That's a real good question, actually.
That's so familiar, but I literally know nothing about that.
And that just makes me want to watch The Pick of Destiny.
That's what I'm thinking of. Oh my
Jack
god,
Black.
That's totally what I was thinking
Tenacious
of.
D.
That's great. I think they were also looking for the Elixir of Life too.
Oh god, they were looking for all this stuff, right? Yeah. Anything that could, like you just referred to there, like reaffirm his beliefs in this mythical Aryan race and or help them win the war. And that's what that's the message in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? That the Ark was carried before the Hebrews and laid waste to entire armies, and like its powers are not of this earth, is how it's referred to, as how Saul refers to it in the
divine powers. We're
left with this question as whether or not the Ark itself was believed to have power, embedded with the power of God, or if it was a transmitter. So the Ark itself has no power. It's just a box laden with gold, and that it literally was like a walkie-talkie with, like, almost, like, in a way, right?
It's like a spiritual medium object, you know what I mean?
Exactly. All right. So where are we at here?
Well, let's get into some of the... Okay, like, I'm actually more curious about these mythical powers and stuff. Like, we do get reference, like Indiana, he at one point has that it's like an illustration of sorts in some crazy antiquated book, whatever, and they see the lightning arc coming from the from the box and exactly like you said, like laying waste to, what is it, the Babylonians or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, and like the guys asked him, they're like, "What's that? Like, what's this?" And Indiana, like, so he's like, "Lightning, fire, power of God or something."
Exactly.
Like, doesn't even know.
Exactly.
And
he doesn't give any credence to it initially.
No, he doesn't really buy into it. He fights it, right? Like in all three movies, well, more so in the first and third because they're related to like Christianity. But he's fighting back and forth with this. He's clearly a believer, but he's also kind of agnostic at the same time.
Well, he's a believer in the
weird way.
history of it.
Right. Exactly. He's like, "Oh, I don't believe in a bunch of superstitious hocus pocus. Like, you know what a cautious fellow I am," and tosses his gun into his case. Well, I mean...
Tosses his gun.
Right, the good old days when you could just throw your revolver in your carry-on and just walk on a plane and no big deal, right? But at the same time, nobody was hijacking planes back then either.
Yeah.
Oh, man. The good old safe 1930s, huh?
Oh, man.
So... what else? Okay, I can list a few other things that this arc did, though, right? So not only did it lay waste to armies and things like that, but it obviously helped the Hebrews actually journey through the desert for 40 years. So
is that the timeline? 40 years?
I believe that was the timeline. It repelled dangerous animals. It prevented like locust swarms and things like that. It stopped the River Jordan from moving when they crossed it.
What?
Is one of the legend. Like the water flows stopped so it wouldn't wash them away.
Wow.
It helped them besiege Jericho. It was the reason why they were able to defeat the Canaanites and the walls of Jericho came down.
Was it around when they did cross the Red Sea and then Moses ends up... remember the whole thing where it goes back on the Egyptians?
You know what? Actually, we need to... Yeah, there's some timeline. I'm not sure. I think that in the book of Exodus, the ark is constructed after that.
Oh, okay.
On Mount Sinai, Moses is instructed to build the ark out of acacia wood, or acacia wood, something like that, and carry the Ten Commandments in it, right? Along with a few other items like this. Oh, what's it called? There was this... I have it in the other document for our full-length episode, but like, the manna, this like food that God supposedly gave to the Hebrews to help them survive through the desert, and there's this speculation as to what that was, like caraway seeds or like this weird dew that would form, and then there would be like these microorganisms that would live in it, and that they would like live off that in the desert, and it was like this weird microclimate stuff.
Do you remember that story when we covered the lore of the Golem? And there was one story in particular that was from one of the books from the Torah or something like that, and it was depicting... It was like the legend of, I can't remember how many, it was like a group of Israelites or something, and they were like in the desert, and they were in a cave or something, and they ended up making an animal out of clay to eat. You remember that? I don't think there's reference to the manna, but I don't know, maybe... Is the manna the actual food itself, or is it like the power imbued in it?
It's the actual food itself, but we just don't know what it is. So it could be mystical, right? It's in the ark, so it presumably has these mystical properties. And the manna, we haven't covered this on the show, but obviously we're familiar with that from another mystical source, the Rapa Nui on Easter Island.
Right.
It's a different association, but they talk about the manna as this mystical force that helped them actually move those massive stone heads on Easter Island.
Right.
Anyway, just kind of an interesting connection there, possibly in terms of like the linguistic connection.
That is actually really interesting.
The lost tribes of Israel, maybe they pass by Easter Island.
Maybe they did.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah. So
can we get to the scene where Indiana Jones meets up with Marion?
Yeah, let's do that.
Because that scene is amazing too. I love how it starts with her with the drinking contest, and everyone's just like, passing money around, bets are going everywhere which way.
Yeah.
And then that really ties into the final sort of sequence, right? In the climax of the movie. Because of her high tolerance for liquor. But she's a very good actor, or actress, I should say.
Yeah.
Actor. We use actor now, right?
It's generic now.
Exactly. But I love that scene, too, because it's very much exactly that. Like, Golden Age Hollywood. There's so much going on. Like, in every single scene of these movies, that's exactly it, right? It's just like, it feels like a whole bustling, like, play. You know what I mean? But just done up to the nines. Like, just
totally.
No expense spared, so to speak, or effort spared. And so you get this whole awesome scene, and then what happens? Like, Indiana, he makes this, like, amazing entrance.
Well, he shows up first and is just chatting with her. Then he leaves to come back later because she's pissed, right?
Okay, so it wasn't the entrance, it was the exit. And that's where we get that another scene where it's, like, this epic where he does his, like, classic turn over the shoulder, and you get, like, the one eye, and it's all just, like, him in shadows, like, silhouetted, and you're just like, damn, you're badass.
Yeah.
Then he leaves, and then the bad guys come.
That's right. That's when we get Major Arnold Thoth. Or Thoth. Is that what it is?
I think
Arnold
it's
Thoth. T-H-O-T.
Okay.
Who's the creepiest looking dude in the world.
Amazing.
Best
creepy.
fit for that character. And
Great
he
villain.
has that line where he's like, let me show you what I am used to, or whatever. And then he's like, "Meh," and he grabs her and they slam her onto the bar.
No time for niceties with that guy.
I really, really enjoyed, like, Miriam is one of my favorite characters, too. I mean, all the main characters are awesome, but, like, her as an actress, I just really enjoy her. And she makes an appearance in the fourth one, the reboot with Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, yeah. Right, she's his mom.
That's right.
Yeah.
I really love that line, though. I feel like some people might think this is cheesy, but when Indiana leaves, when she tells him to get out of here and come back tomorrow, and she's clearly drunk from from her drinking contest, and she just has that line where she's like, ha, like, see you tomorrow, Indiana Jones, and it's just like so like sarcastic, but like still like lamenting the past, and it's just loaded with emotion. I love that line.
She's bitter, for that whole thing. It is kind of funny though, because they have this history, and you're like, well, wait a second, how young were you actually when all this was going down? Because I don't know, they make it seem as if she was like, like quite young, like maybe like 15 or something, or like, and then he's like obviously older than her, because the insinuation is that he took advantage of the situation because of her dad being his mentor and all this kind of stuff. And
there's definitely an age gap.
There is an age gap, of course. And then so she's had probably like 15 years plus to stew over this, and then he
maybe
just comes
that long,
waltzing.
something like that. Yeah,
at least that, I would imagine. And then because she makes the point of saying, like, I always knew you'd come through that door one day, like, never knew when, but and here she's just sitting in owns a bar in Tibet. Like, that is the most random ass thing I've ever. But it's really cool. And then, of course, by the end of the scene, the entire thing is burnt down, and her entire prospects are gone with it. So she becomes his partner. I love how she maintains a sense or a level of duplicity, right? Because she doesn't tell him that she has the artifact. She's literally wearing it on her neck. Yeah. And then exactly that, like 3 seconds later, the bad guys stomp through the door and whatever. And then another part about that scene that I really enjoyed was the burning of the guy's palm, the Thoth, or whatever his name is. Yeah.
Arnold. Major Arnold.
Major Arnold Thoth.
Yeah.
And he like, it's this, like, you see it in, like, when was that? When they're in the desert. It's, like, quite a bit further into the film. And then you just get his palm up to the camera, and you're like, okay.
Burnt into his hand.
Yeah, it's like the mission's been burned into his soul or something like that. He's not getting out alive,
Oh, no. You know he's going to get the worst of it. And he really does get the worst of it.
I want to know who was responsible for those special effects.
Oh, man.
They're amazing.
They're so great, right? And they have just that retro quality now when you watch it. And it's just so 80s. Love it. Reminds me of Reanimator or something like that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Same sort of qualities.
Another interesting point about that scene in the bar, there was some things I noticed that were just, like, from a cinematic perspective, were kind of funny. Like, when Indiana shoots his gun, it's way louder than the other guns. Like, it's a different, not even louder, but deeper. It's more of a boom, boom, boom sound, like like the big American gun, right? Like, whereas the German guns have a higher pitch sound. Like, throughout the entire movie, if you the scenes where Indiana's shooting, it's much more of a boom, which is kind of interesting.
That. Yeah,
really, like, emphasizing American muscle, obviously, and, like, power and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There was one other thing about that scene. I can't remember it, so we can come back. But anyway, let's get back to the Ark. So they end up discovering that the Nazis are searching for the Lost Ark of the Covenant in Tanis, the ancient Egyptian city of Tanis. So this is where India and his friend Salah actually end up locating the Well of the Souls, because he ends up, of course, partnering with Miriam.
Right.
He gets the headpiece. They replicate the staff, although they never actually, okay, there's markings on the exterior of the headpiece, and I guess that's what gives them the staff height and all that kind of stuff to use, right?
Okay, must be.
The city of Tanis, the real one, was discovered by a guy named Pierre Montet in 1939, and I think it was 1140 BCE. I have to triple check. I think it was 1140. It became the de facto capital of Egypt for a time, Tanis, in northern Egypt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just a fun fact. So again, some historical accuracies to it.
Yeah.
There is reference to an Egyptian pharaoh in the 900s BCE taking the ark back to Egypt. That isn't referenced in any of the other books of the Torah. So not in Exodus, not in, the book of Jeremiah or whatever the other ones are. There's different versions almost in each one of them as to where it ended up. So,
Just to add to the confusion.
yeah, like in some it's talking about how it was snuck out of the Temple of Solomon before the Babylonian siege. Others talk about how it was stolen in 593 by the Babylonians during the siege of Solomon's Temple. Solomon's Temple, right? So that is the big question. Where the hell is it? But in Raiders, it's in Egypt. So they're going with the more ancient version of when it disappeared, like 400 years before the Babylonian siege of Jerusalem.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting.
Interesting, yeah. Because, there is that other... Wait a second. Where does that come in where it's like... After that, after it's taken to Egypt, there's the other version where it's taken from Egypt and taken somewhere else.
Yeah, like it could have gone from Egypt to Ethiopia.
Right, that was the other one. Mm-hmm.
And now, today, that's one of the alleged final resting places, right? In our Church of Mary of Zion in Ethiopia, I think it's called.
Right, they have.
And they claim to have it in the basement, basically. Their version of the Holy of Holies, which was the room in King Solomon's temple that it was kept. And only one priest would be allowed to go in once a year to pray with the ark and then leave.
That would be a perfect mission for Ant-Man.
Oh, yes.
To go and infiltrate the St. Mary, whatever the hell temple that is that you just said.
Yeah.
And go and see if they actually have this freaking ark, man. Because I want to know.
Whatever the hell temple it is, it's like you and I walk in there, we just burst into flames. Jeez. There's no way we...
Just strike me down now.
Yeah. Good heavens, right? So, okay. So they end up... they get the ark, they lift it up, him and Sal find it, but then, of course... foiled again, Belloc.
Again?
And they get locked down in the Well of the Souls.
Right.
This is a weird part, because they escape quite easily from this Well of the Souls.
How do they do that again?
Well, he knocks over a statue into the wall where these snakes are coming into the... Right?
Oh, right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very done for cinematic effect, obviously, right? Like, snakes wouldn't be going in there...
No.
Ever. There'd be no reason for them to. They wouldn't be going in there.
More just like a weird symbol of like, I don't even know.
It's a symbol, but it's also, it's kind of a weird symbol though, isn't it? Because the Ark of the Covenant is this religious artifact instructed to be built by God, and then it's surrounded by the one piece of imagery that is like very linked to like Satan now, but like evil before Satan was...
Well, but that's interesting because you could say that evil does lurk in the lands of God, right? Because even in the Garden of Eden, for example, the serpent was present.
True.
So it's not as if he can just say, bye-bye.
I suppose maybe that is the message then. There's so many snakes around because this object is the pinnacle of the Holy of Holies.
Exactly.
So its juxtaposition is the exact opposite.
And those that are unworthy, the temptation is always there, right? So maybe that's why the snakes are present, is to kind of
and of course we know that Indiana Jones hates snakes.
Well, that's the other part
so
of it
that's
too.
the other part of it too, right? Which we don't actually know why until the third movie.
Exactly.
Which we'll have to cover on Film Friday too.
I love that scene.
Loaded with historical significance
on the train when
too.
he's like outrunning those guys. He's like 15.
I know, right? So much fun. Okay, let's get to the end. Let's just our thoughts and stuff.
Sure. Well, okay. So they end up escaping from that thing, and then there's this whole shindig where he ends up finding Marion because he thinks she's dead, right? Because of that whole chase scene and the explosion and everything.
Okay, so like they find Marion before the Well of the Souls stuff. He thinks she's dead because they're in Egypt. They're running away from the Nazis chasing after them in the streets of Cairo, and she ends up on a truck that explodes. He thinks it's the truck that she's on, right? Of course it's not, because the baskets got switched. Shows it's a miracle that he runs into her in that tent.
I know, right?
Like, it's of all the tents out there, like, come on.
I know, there's like a million of them.
Yeah, meant to be, I guess. So, yeah.
Okay, so then that happens, but then he realizes, he's like, shoot, I actually have to leave you here. Like, apologies, but I'll come back to you later.
Sorry.
Where do they go? They're on the top of that mount. And then that's where they end up going into the Well of the Souls, right? And I loved that scene where it was like very much, it reminded me of Ghostbusters, actually, because you get like this like lightning and the storm brewing in the sky and this big swirly thing and the clouds and whatever else. And then when they actually end up lifting up the huge stone lid, you get this image of, what was it? It was like it was an Egyptian, like a dog. Oh shoot, I know who that is. I can't, off the top of my head now, I can't remember. You know, like the dog face.
Anubis, isn't it? The jackal?
Oh, the jackal. Is that who it is? Okay.
Sure.
Because there was that one guy that had the dog head, and he was like the reader of the script leading into like the underworld or something? I don't even know.
Well, Thoth is the underworld guy. That's the bird.
Oh, and he's
face.
got the falcon,
The pointy. Yeah.
Falcon guy.
Right.
The pointy falcon dude.
Pointy falcon guy.
But, okay, so then they get that imagery. I just really liked that scene, how dramatic it was, and the fact that Indy's just, like, watching over everyone. He's not participating in the effort. He's just, like, waiting. He's just got his, like, teeth bared. He's like, oh, I gotta get it. It's like a kid on Christmas morning. And then, okay, so then we get that whole run-in and everything, but then we get to this epic sort of final sequence, I guess, hey?
Yeah, like, I mean, obviously...
Actually, there's like 2 or 3.
Well, we're kind of skipping... Yeah, I mean, you almost think that that's going to be... If you haven't ever seen the movie, like, you would almost think that that's getting towards the end there. Like, they find the Well of the Souls, but then him and Marion, of course... Like, Marion ends up getting pushed down in there with them, right? The Nazis now have the Ark, and the whole movie is just filled up with, like, crazy action, right? Like, we're mostly just talking about the historical stuff, right? But, okay, let's get back to that then. So they escape from the Well of the Souls by knocking over a statue of, like, the Nubis jackal-headed statue thing that you're referencing, because they realize snakes are getting in. This is so funny, because they knock over the wall, and then they end up exiting through an already excavated, like, building. Like, they push a block out of the wall, and then they walk out of what was already there. It's like, so you guys already excavated an entranceway. You go in it. There's a dead end, but there's a bunch of holes in the wall and snakes going in it.
And you don't
ask any questions about it. It's like, you guys should have found the Well of the Souls a long time ago. Yeah. Without the staff, if you found, right? So that part was a little bit kind of funny. But of course, they have to get out somehow.
True.
Let's jump to the end.
Let's do it.
Let's jump to the end.
Jumping.
So they have this crazy chase scene. He's still just trying to find the Ark, trying to get to the Ark. He ends up threatening to blow it up. Belloc calls his bluff.
Yeah.
They end up captured once again. How many times does he get captured in this movie? Him and
at least half a dozen.
Him and Miriam. Anyway. But he realizes that he has to close his eyes when they decide to open the Ark. And, like, Belloc convinces the German commander who's in charge at the time, I can't remember his name, to open it before they send it back to Berlin. Right. He's basically saying, like, you don't want to send it all the way back to Berlin to have him open it and it's empty. Or there's none of the treasures in there at all, right? He believes they're in there. He just wants to see, right? He's just convincing them just to see it. So they lift it off, and it's full of sand. And then this is where the Major Arnold is, like, not at all like the Himmler character, because he starts to laugh. He's, like, laughing hysterically
Unless
at Belloc.
he's just laughing because he's insane, and he's like, oh my god, everything, and I'm just going crazy.
I don't think so. He's laughing because it's sand. He's like, oh, like, all this for nothing? Like, he's basically sand, like... Because he's clearly not religious, obviously.
True.
But then, this is where it gets weird. And, like, this is what I wanted to talk about with you, and I have some questions for you. Like,
all right.
Because... this idea of the Ark, like, what is it holding? There's no commandments in there. There's no jar of manna.
Nope.
There's no other objects, ritual objects of any kind. There's sand, and then that slowly turns into, like, this portal. It looks like a portal to another world.
It almost starts to look misty.
Yeah. And then all these spirits come out. All these, like, ghost-like spectral entities start flying around.
Yeah.
That's weird to me. Why is that?
It is almost like a mix-up between the Ark of the Covenant and the, like, Pandora's box, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they're trying to imply, is that they've literally just opened up Pandora's box here, and there's no going back, essentially.
Right.
I have a question for you, though. Like, how does Indy know to keep his eyes closed?
Instinct, I guess. I mean...
where he read it somewhere along the way or something?
I suppose...
Because he is the expert on this stuff, but... We don't really get any illusions or insight into why that is.
No.
And is it because the eyes are the entrance to the soul? It's strange because because at first those ghosts and spirits are all floating around. They're not really doing anything, but then it starts to ramp up, and then you get the big spiritual ghost thing that's like this beautiful woman floating in front of Milosh or whatever.
It's Major Arnold.
Is it Major Arnold?
Yeah,
okay.
And then it turns into that.
And then it turns into
horror.
the death face, the death mask, so to speak. And then from there, it basically burns up an inferno for the French guy who's standing in front of the Ark.
Yeah.
And then starts emitting this divine lightning. And the lightning goes into the chests of the Nazis. It doesn't go into the eyes. So that, for me, is confusing, right? Because Indy says, don't look at it, don't look at it.
I think it does both. So, like, it goes through the chest of some, and then others, it was, like, both. It was the chest and the eyeballs.
True. So then why didn't it get them through the chest?
Because he's a righteous man.
They're up there. They're on the... It almost looks like they're on top of, like, a lightning pole.
It's very much implying... It's the hero's journey.
It is.
Right? It's the... I mean, dare I say it, he almost is, like, a Christ-like figure. He's literally tied to a pole. He's, like, on a pole.
That's
like,
dangerous, yeah.
Well, he's the savior of the Ark.
True.
He's the only one spared by the power of God.
Except for Marion, too.
Well, yeah, because she's...
Because she's like the Virgin Mary?
far from it, from what we gather.
True, yeah.
But, yeah, and then he's obviously been the one trying to keep it out of the wrong hands this entire time.
So he has the power of God behind him, then.
Yeah,
and so he is the neo-Israelite in this whole scenario.
Yeah, in a way.
But not actually. Anyways,
and it ends with the Ark making its way back to the U.S., and
gets stored away.
And gets stored away in that epic scene where it's being pushed through the massive warehouse full of the exact same crate.
Like miles and miles and miles and miles of warehouse.
And he makes that comment.
Boxes that look exactly the same.
Never going to find it. And we get that in the fourth one, right? Like, they bring that scene back again. And he has that line at the end where he's just like, fools, like bureaucratic fools. Like, they don't know what they have.
Yeah.
And just this idea that the U.S. is going to try to harness, like, the military power of the Ark of the Covenant.
I know, and they say they're like, we've got our best and brightest on it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and he's like,
what?
Who? Best top men. That's what he says. We've got top men on it.
Top men.
It's like, buddy, you didn't even know what the Ark was when you came to ask me.
Yeah. So where are these people? Why didn't you go to them in the first place?
Yeah, bizarre.
To me, what I feel like they're going to do is do the classic thing, the classic Smithsonian Museum thing, where they just put it away and then it just gets lost.
Yep.
And it doesn't get harnessed, which seems bizarre, right? Because of the fact that the Nazis went to all of this trouble just to get their hands on it.
Yeah.
And then, push comes to shove, it ends up in their hands, and what are they going to do? Just no follow up on that.
Nope.
Just clean your hands and put that away. And
that's right.
There you go.
But at least the Nazis don't have it.
True. It's out of the wrong hands.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for our discussion of Raiders.
What about your favorite scene?
How can I forget?
Oh my goodness.
Okay. I mean, well, we actually kind of just talked about it. So, like, my two favorite scenes, actually, they bookend this movie. I love the beginning with, Jacques, start the engine! Start the engine, Jacques! And he's just running from the Jovitos. It's just so classic, and that's been parodied in so many things.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so perfect, with Belloc laughing, that echoing evil villain
I feel
laugh.
like it was parodied in Ace Ventura.
It totally was, where he's running away from
Yeah.
100%, and like in like Family Guy, million different shows and stuff, right? And then there's nothing more satisfying in the whole world than the face melting of Major Arnold Thoth. And the scream he lets out before, it's literally like he's like looking at the ghost thing and he's all like mesmerized, and then he's just got like this such girlish scream. He's like like it's so high pitched, it's like perfect. I wonder how many times he had to like do that scream.
I wonder.
And then just melts, eyeballs falling out. It's perfect. It's perfect.
One of my favorite scenes, I don't know if this is my favorite, but the one where I think they're at this point they're in the Well of the Souls and they're trapped or whatever, and Marion, she starts to run and she just starts running into skeleton after skeleton after skeleton as all these like mummified like bodies that are just everywhere all around her, and she's just like, oh my God, she's just freaking out, and then I think Indy comes to the rescue.
Yeah.
But I had this thought, I was like, oh my goodness, is this that famous film that everyone talks about where the actress, when she was filming the scene, she didn't actually realize that these are actual dead bodies around her? They never told her that. And then I remembered, I was like, wait a second, no, that's from Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not her, but I had this fun little moment to myself where I was like, oh my God, are those actual bodies? The horror.
Yeah, well.
I liked that scene though, because the mummies, they were screaming at her.
Yeah.
They were like,
so
like,
mean. Like this like weird like exhale of like a
exactly this
thing.
Strange thing. And then there was that one where it's like almost like it looked like a full royal family sitting on like a big bench or something. They all come flying on top of her kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe those were the spirits, those things floating around in the final scene. That's all the people that maybe were left there.
I wonder.
I don't know.
I guess it depends on what version of the story you believe, right?
True,
If it was stolen in the 9th century BC
Yeah.
and could have had some, like some unfortunate, like Hebrews be sacrificed with it or something when it was stolen or whatever. Who knows? I don't know. That's interesting because that definitely doesn't come up in any of the other descriptions of the Ark with it being like a portal or it being housing souls.
Yeah. That just is, it just seems like a confusion of Pandora's box to me. But whatever. Yeah.
So, thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned for Ascension. If you haven't finished that series, go finish it because we will be releasing that at some point. We're going to re-record that. It's going to be even better than the first time we did it.
Yeah.
And so stay tuned for that. And let us know what you guys think about our thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark. What's your favorite Indiana Jones movie of the trilogy? Or, well, there's 4 now. Some purists will say there's only 3. I'm sort of one of those people. But yeah, let us know what you think about all this, the historical accuracies of Nazis' search for treasure and things like that. You can hit us up, email us into the portal mailbox at gmail.com. Where else are we? I'm drawing blanks here. At Into the Portal Podcast on Instagram and Facebook.
Twitter.
At Into the Portal 1, the number 1 on Twitter. And we're always active on there chatting with people. So yeah. Love to chat with you guys.
Definitely.
So thank you so much, and we will be back not this Sunday. We are dark this week, but we will be back next week with a pretty epic cryptozoological case for you guys.
Yep.
So stay tuned.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.
A great way to become a nurse is the Felician Way with Felician University's accelerated BSN program. Felician ABSN is designed for people who have non-nursing college credits and want to begin a new career as a nurse on an accelerated timeline. With 2 learning formats, a hybrid program in Parsippany and an on-ground program in Rutherford, Felician ABSN provides multiple paths to nursing success. It's the Felician Way. Plus, we have seats available now. To learn more, search Felician ABSN.